So yeah, so we could talk about the Appalachian Trail, our Appalachian Footpath Box now.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question from when you went to
Yeah.
Go Search here recently, because we had already kind of touched on this when we talked before, and that was the difference between looking in the spring and then looking in the fall. I think your first search, right, was in the spring in North Carolina, and now you have fall in Pennsylvania. So having now done both seasons, could you like contrast like the two styles? But I would also like to know, would there have been a spot in the spring that you go in the fall and you're like, that's not a good spot anymore? Now that I'm in the fall, that'd be way too easy to find.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We went in the summer in July, but for all intents and purposes, it was probably the same. Yeah, that was a big deal. And that was one of the things that really stood out to us, because and it could be because North Carolina could have been more vegetative around there. But, in the spring, summertime, it was thick. There was no way I would have went the places that I went off trail in Pennsylvania if it were foliage like that, because there was a lot of those sticker branches everywhere, which were impossible to get through, and I didn't even attempt some of them. But even with everything so thick, I wouldn't see him like bushwhacking through there just to hide a box. And I don't think he wants us to do the same. I wouldn't think, because then you're just tearing up the landscape, So I don't know if some of the places we went in Pennsylvania would be that thick. There were some pretty open places, and in some of the video that we had, it looked like even in the summertime would be pretty open. But then again, it leaves open to the biggest question I have is, how did he hide it? How do we know we're on the right track? Like, is there something that's going to specifically draw us to an area off trail, or to go off trail to explore further up to 100 yards, maybe, I don't know, that would be compelling enough to say, hey, all right, stop here now, exit trail, and go, grid searching here or not. That to me, out of the only 2 times I went boots on the ground, is my biggest question. Where the heck did he hide it? Not where, like specifically where, but how, or I should rephrase that. How did he hide it? In what type of container? Because that really is going to determine, where we're going to start looking off trail to find the box. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And so, like, I guess that, like you're saying, it depends on the container and also where he hid it, because foliage and dense foliage, thorns and all that stuff, it might not matter at all if it's hidden by rocks.
Right.
Like it may, if you're hiding it in brush or something like that, now that may be something you want to take into account more, like fall and spring. But if the placement has really nothing to do with that, seasonality might not really even matter.
Well, that and getting to it, it may not be where it's at. Really, it could be wide open where it's at, but getting to that point, you have to determine which way to get off the trail, because there were times when we were walking through that you can see through the thick brush, and we're like, hey, might be a good spot, but how do you get to it?
Yeah, like, yeah. Just navigating to a place that you see is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, maybe 100 or 200 yards off this trail might be a really good spot, but getting there. And then I kept thinking about the safety aspect, and if it's, I kept listening to some of the American Treasure podcasts where he says now, in the early stages now, if it's dangerous, just don't do it. And I'm thinking, is this dangerous? And when I grabbed onto that vine and that tree fell down, or it sounded like it fell down, it probably wasn't as big as it sounded. I'm like, this is dangerous.
Yeah,
I
you're like, not in this spot anymore.
And then walking up those hills, because when you got off trail, you're now walking up hills. You're walking over dead trees, and they're not stable. So that's another safety aspect you have to keep in mind when you're navigating over this brush. Is this, you got to keep asking yourself, is this safe? Because I'm to get to a point where I'm 100 feet, 200 feet off trail, and is it safe for me to come back? I mean, those are all the questions that kept going through my head, and I'm thinking, man, would it really even be here if it's this much of a chore to get to? And when I say chore, I'm not saying, oh, I'm some out of shape, lazy person that doesn't want to go, but would the average person that goes off here be okay to search this area without getting into trouble?
And also, I was just thinking, like, is a place that's safe when it's hidden safe forever? Because there could easily an obstruction or something could happen unless, I mean, if we know that the place is safe and safe forever, it could kind of narrow it down, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good point, because, there were a lot of trees that were down, and if for example, if the place that was hidden, the main path to get there is all of a sudden has these big trees that are uprooted that are laying down, is that going to turn somebody off for even looking in that spot? Because there were a couple root bulbs that were up, and I'm like, man, these are some pretty big trees that fell. I'm not even go check over there. What if that were the case? And did he even use that and take that into consideration when he went to the spot? Could there possibly be an area where he is not accessible? And when he says this before, where, well, if your spot's not accessible, wait until it is. They're not going to go and start cleaning up trees. If it's off trail, they're not going to touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to say, oh, hey, JCB hit a box out this way, we better clean it up so he can go to it. So that's a really good question that maybe, it would be one to ask him. Hey, you said that if one's not accessible due to a natural disaster or something like that, does that mean over time, natural things falling, not making it accessible? How would you even know?
Right, because the trail itself is what would be accessible or not accessible,
Right.
as far as like a parks department is concerned.
Yeah.
The point you just made is they don't care about a box that may or may not be hidden in this area.
Yeah, I can't go to the parks department and say, hey, look at mile marker X, there's a big tree that fell down like 100 yards off the thing. They'd be like, yeah. And
yeah,
it's like, well, my box is there.
I promised everybody it would be safe.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind. If anybody watching has a thought on that, let us know. But that's something to take into consideration. But I did notice in Pennsylvania, I like the fact there are a lot of rock formations, because in my mind, I'm thinking that's where he safely hid these things. Now, whereabouts, like he said, he doesn't want him to accidentally be stumbled upon. Well, yeah, you wouldn't normally go around looking at rock formations if you weren't looking. So that would probably, single out only to the treasure hunters. But what if you had to use the bathroom, right? What they say, 1 to 200 feet off trail and try to go somewhere hidden. Well, that would be the first place I'd go, is right behind a big rock that's 6 feet or taller.
Yeah.
So.
Or even if you think of like maybe when you were a teenager and you go hike in the woods and stuff, like where would you be going when you were off? Hey, I want to climb on big rocks. I'm a teenager with my buddies here in the woods. Like, let's go climb and explore these areas.
That's a good point, because those, when I look on Google Maps or something, I see pictures, those are the spots that would come out to me. Hey, let's go climb this, and then you're going to find it for sure.
Yeah.
So, those are good questions. But what still comes back to me is where do you where do you determine to go off trail? And is that what the trail on the map is telling us to do? You know?
Right. And how I think kind of this leads to the point of just how specific of an area does the map take us to? Like
Yeah.
the map, I would love to know when this is ultimately all done, the solve from the book, how close does that get you in person ultimately?
Yeah. Because he
So
did
I've tried to
say,
narrow it down to this point is, can I find a good trail or a general area that I like? But I think if you're being reasonable about how it's going to be solved, it's probably going to be much more specific than that before you even get there.
yeah,
Not
because,
that I'm not going to have fun hopping in a car wandering around in the woods, but I just think
right.
it'll probably be pinpointed a bit more for the exact solve.
Yeah. Because you need to know, and this goes for any of the boxes, you know, now that I have a couple boots on the ground, you have some boots on the ground experiences, you know, it's a big area out there. If you can get it down, and this is why I have no problem, you know, sharing my solves and everything, because if I said, I know where X box is, not Xbox, yeah, right. I know where this specific box is at. It's in ABC forest, and it's somewhere within this 5 mile, 10 mile radius. Boy, that's a pretty big area, you know. And when you get out there and you're talking, this could be at any spot, and you got to remember these boxes are small, and so it's only, you know, what goes to back of my mind again is what kind of container do you put them in, because that's going to determine how I'm going to approach this grid search. Because, you know, in the fall there was a lot of leaves out there. You know, I easily could have stepped on it. But then I have to think, is he going to put it out? You sort of have to think about every season minus snow, right? That what it could look like if you stumbled upon this or search for this in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, in the winter without snow, right? Which is going to be just like the fall, you know, which it's got to tell you is, you know, there has to be, I would think there has to be something in the solve that would get you to that place. But man, what does that look like? You know?
Yeah. And I also wonder too about, because the box is not, they're not buried, but you said it's seasonality, the leaves fall in the spring, and this could go on for years. So I'm just wondering, like, at how many years could just the forest itself bury it? You know, just through
Yeah.
seasons happening again and again, and
Which makes me think, is it that close to the ground? Which brings back the rock thing up
yeah,
again.
exactly. That's what I was going to try to get at. It's like, maybe it's not like on the forest floor.
Then
Maybe.
if you're moving rocks, man, when I saw a rock that looked a little suspicious, and I moved it and I cut myself, it was real sharp. But first of all, they're heavy. Second of all, you don't know what's under that rock when you pick it up. That first thing that came to my mind was a big fat snake or something under there. And I did find one little hole with rocks over it, and I was like, I'm not even going to go near that. There's something living in there, and the
Yeah,
hole
no,
itself
that's a big
wasn't big
factor
enough.
too. Is like the nature factor. I'm like, I don't want to disturb whatever could be living in here because he's
Yeah,
probably going to be angry.
yeah, exactly. And that's something you have to think about as well, and especially with the rocks, because depending on the time of year, snakes, you know, cold blooded, they're going to want to stay warm, and those rocks attract the heat, and you know, where are you going to look? So it's, man, you know, in a way, I'm glad I'm looking for this box, because it's given an area. But if you're looking for any of the other boxes, and man, the lion share box, that's going to be nearly impossible. You know, even if this, when once the smaller boxes will start to get found, and I think he's correct. Once one or two are found, then we can start um, putting things together. But you know, you're talking like the past and future box, which I mean, I think two of them we know in a general area. I mean, Appalachian Trail, 14 states. And we know Forest Fen Box is in one of 4 states. But the other ones, and I think those might be the last ones to be found, of the smaller ones. And obviously I'm putting my money on Lion Share going to be the absolute last one to be found.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I mean, the other ones I don't pay attention to as much, but also it just seems that the past and future could be in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
So I know people have locked into a couple of places, and again, I'm not up to date on that one so much, but just because it's a lot less specific geographically, right? For in chapter wise, how he's written the chapter.
Yeah, and maybe the Lion Share clues will be more clear in when the other boxes are found. Maybe those will hold some insight to help with that one. But I mean, we're doing chapter 10. Currently working on for our video, and Laura's got some ideas on where she thinks it might be, but I'm still not drawing a place, from that. So, and we're over halfway done with those chapters, right? No, we're almost halfway done. There's 23 chapters, and we're on chapter 10. So,
Yeah, the Lion's Share, I definitely have a few like Spidey sense moments, like he said, where I'm like, okay, I'll bookmark this one here. Like there are a couple of things that I can't get out of my head after having read it. I read the full thing twice so far, and then gone back to certain chapters. But yeah, there's some things that for sure have stuck with me. I'm just less focused on it because I do really think it's going to be the last one to be found. I think the clues inside of the smaller boxes will probably really help with that.
I do too.
But I also have a question for you regarding that. So let's say once the first small box is found, there's going to be a laminated clue. Do you think that clue gets shared? Do you think like multiple laminated clues pop up and then there's, is this a real clue? Is this a false clue? How do you think that plays out?
Yeah, that's gone through my head a lot. And depending on, I know, John said in the early days of his interviews with Dave on American Treasure podcast, he said he was thinking about, putting that one clue, then adding another clue or something like that. It's going to be up to the person. I think the person that finds it may not be a vocal person that we know, or could be. I mean, I don't know. And if it's not somebody that's active on social media or anything, I don't think we're going to know. And then you're going to have everybody coming out of the woodwork saying, I know what it is. And you have to be careful. I think holistically people aren't like that and aren't going to do that. But I think it leaves the door open for false things to come out and things like that. And there's a lot at stake, and it's a tough call. I'm hoping that he releases some more clues, and I'm hoping the person that does find it, I don't expect them to, I don't know if I would or not. I probably would, if I found it, I would share it.
It's another part of the game, which I think is cool. I'm once that moment gets here, it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. And
I can't wait.
There's going to be fighting revolving around the clue, like the release of it, the fact that it's not released. It's just no matter what's going to happen, it's going to be interesting. So
when it's released,
can't wait for that moment.
Yeah, because he said he's going to release it. He didn't say when. Yeah. That'd be something. But back to the Appalachian Trail one, I'm still convinced enough that I'm still looking in Pennsylvania. But man, Virginia, Damascus, that's the spot. And if to all the Little Rock Pond trail people, there's a trail, and as I'm looking to my right, I'll put it up on the screen, but there's a trail right out of Damascus, and I shared this with you, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that. the way that trail looked. And then I'll share also why I think Damascus, what brought me here. It wasn't just the look of a trail. It was something. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I like it. I again also like the area for a couple of reasons, and even in the trail that you sent me as well. I think it's pretty because also you have to remember Little Rock Pond doesn't match perfect either when you line it up. Like it's kind of the part along the pond isn't, at least the way that I've lined it up. So it depends which way you tilt it, but regardless, it doesn't line up perfectly. So, but yeah, and so same. I think a lot of these now I didn't get the opportunity to actually overlay from the map in the book with some, but just visually, I think a lot of the ones that you sent me, it looks interesting. And I hadn't made it that far. So yeah, I was excited when you had sent it to me.
Yeah. And then as I look so I have a book that gives you all the data. I forgot what the book's called, but it has cumulative distance from Canada. That's how you pronounce it, right? The northern part, miles from Canada is miles from Springer Mountain. But if you go to the column where the miles from Canada is to Damascus, Virginia is 1,727.7 miles. And when that came out to me, I'm like, whoa, I mean, there's a lot of interpretations what 1727 means. And if it even, is to be taken as miles, it could be meters, it could be this, it could be that. But that stood out to me a little bit. And that's what got me to look in that area. And that puts you right at Damascus. And then to put that trail right by there, I don't know.
That's a part that I love too. It's a 1727, how it lined up. And then I had written about this before, but another part that I like that goes with the Motherwell quote, which again, I'll read it real quick. Walk on a rainbow trail, a trail of song, and all about you will be beauty. And there is a way out of every dark mist over a rainbow trail. And the part in there that I like is the on a trail of song. And a while back, I had looked into trails of song and tried to dig into that. And there's a place in Virginia. It's called the Crooked Road, which is actually a highway that drives through Virginia. And it's like a musical heritage trail. And it goes directly through Damascus.
Oh, wow.
That's something else that I really liked concerning that area.
Yeah. And I also had and I don't know if it's in the right spot or not. But you have what was it, Comer's Creek? Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
if I think that was in Virginia. I don't have it in front of me, but Comer's Creek, man, I could see it now. Yeah, John's original name, I guess, John Comer, and he hit it by Comer's Creek. Wouldn't that be something? But it's something to look into. But the Damascus, it's right by Jefferson Forest, right?
Yeah.
I believe. All that stuff really comes into play with me, and I need to look a little more about the areas and see if it's right by the Tennessee Virginia border. If that plays into it from somehow, I think it's only a couple miles from there, but I don't have a lot of pictures of the trail. I haven't looked it up on All Trails yet to see if that pops up, if there are any pictures on there. But do you have anything else that really points you to the Virginia area?
Yeah. So Damascus, another thing that I found, again, just some light Googling, and I found a place, the historical marker database, that had some information there. Because how I got there was looking up Native American connections.
Yeah.
Just because I really like that arrow. I think it's an arrow anyway. It's along the dash line. And just kind of, if you've read the whole book, right, there are some connections to Native American history in there. So I just kind of, all along that area in the United States is where they used to live. So I just, kind of always had that gut feeling. And looking, I found that along something called Laurel Creek, which makes me think of Mountain Laurel, is where there was a hunting camp, I guess, with the Cherokee Indians at one point in time.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I like because it's a net connection to, again, maybe a bit of a stretch with the mountain laurel line in the book, but also the arrow there that's along the dash line. So
Yeah.
another thread to pull on, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I'm still going to be focusing on Pennsylvania. There's a couple other places, but I was going to pivot a little bit towards my loose Connecticut solve, but I think Virginia is going to really, I'm going to work in parallel with this one and see if I can make other things fit. Now that I know we have some time, probably, I mean, I know I'm not going boots on the ground again this year. Um, I'm sure the weather is going to be changing quite a bit out east. That's going to make it pretty difficult, and I don't want to attempt it and try to play with the weather. And plus, I just don't have that much extra time to vacation time to go out there. But yeah, I'm going to be focusing on the Virginia area. That map that looks pretty close, and although I don't think, you know, with the Little Rock Pond map, he said it's off, it's not going to be easily to find. You're not going to stumble across it. So if that map is showing you, hey, it's here, it's right off of it, would he even have that on there?
Well, the part of the Little Rock Pond thing that still always gets me, and I don't like I said it doesn't match perfect and it doesn't, but it is super close. All right. Like, I'm not going to kid myself here, but the main issue that I have is the puzzle just becomes too easy.
Yeah.
Like, that's all you had to do. Somebody, I think, put that together before the book was even out, or like, I mean, that is too, I get it. It still hasn't been found yet, but in terms of a puzzle, like the puzzles solved like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, this doesn't satisfy me, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't want to go I don't want to go down the road to thinking, well, it has to be complicated because, it's this, but I also don't think he's going to make it have one qualifier in the whole chapter that's going to put you, 85% of where you should be looking either.
Yeah. Because again, like, if it's at Little Rock Pond and all this matches, then where are the bear and the rocks? Where's the tree and the magnifying glass?
Yeah.
Like, can anybody that's been to Little Rock Pond show me what the dog means or the scroll, whatever it is?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and that's what I've been pushing around, the idea of thinking maybe these pictograms on here are just indicators of everything on the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And and the clues are more in the text. These are just, but then it's like, well, how do you, where would you go then? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, unless, my area, I'm just using this as an example, I could see where if it was meant to be interpreted at a halfway point, that's a general enough area that if you went out a few times and grid searched that area, you could in fact find it, right? Because I don't think I'm going to need to go out on my search area with any chapter and say, okay, I'm reading off my notes and I have to turn here. I have to walk 10 paces and turn there, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but if your clues get you to a general area, then, it's not going to be a specific, I don't know. He did say that after reading it that, I think he said the lion's share and then one other box, you can pretty much get a location where you can send somebody out there and go find it.
Yeah,
That's
I think
pretty specific.
Yeah, my intuition with this, at least this one, because it's the one I've been working the hardest on, is that you should get within a football field, maybe even like a half a football field search area is kind of how do you feel about that, or kind of what size do you think it would be?
You know, I put a poll out not too long ago to all everybody and asked where I thought it was at. And the majority of people are saying 100 to 200 feet off the trail. That's pretty far. I think one person said it was 20 to 40 feet off. You know, 20 to 40 feet is pretty short. So maybe I'm not thinking it's that close. Maybe, you know, 40 to 100 feet, 150 feet tops. Again, it would have to really depend, because where we walked, there were some spots I could see 50 yards, you know, maybe even 100 yards off that I think, yeah, you could probably make that. But again, that was that time of year. You know, would it look that way in the summer? So maybe it is better to go hunting in the summertime, you know, because then you're getting an idea of where you could look that wouldn't be just off limits if it were, you know, because if you looked when everything was dead and fallen, it's like, well, you know, would he even have saw this place? Because you got to think he needed to find a spot when he was looking. He just didn't randomly bushwhack through a bunch of stuff and say, you know what, I'm just going to hope that there's something behind all this brush to hide it.
You know? Yeah, so you're saying look in the worst conditions, basically.
Look in the worst time of year.
The most growth, right? The
yeah.
biggest, yeah.
Because then if it's something that he couldn't have seen off the trail, I doubt he made a path and then found a spot. I think maybe he knew a spot and he found a path to get there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're saying, like, if you take when the woods are at its fullest growth and you say, okay, well, how could I make a path when it's grown this far? And that would be a place where it would be reasonable to hide it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And, you know, that's why I think it's really important for the boots on the ground trip, even though the ones that I'm taking doesn't necessarily equate in my mind. This is exactly where it's at. This is like research. Right? I'm going to say, okay, that's why I like Pennsylvania so much, because there were spots I thought even in the summertime I could probably access. It was laid out, because when I went to North Carolina, it was thick.
Yeah,
it was really thick, and there was like, man, there's no way and there was nothing that I thought he could really, at least, I mean, I know the spot I went was only 8 miles or something long, and there's like hundreds of miles that you go through, but at least the spot I looked at, you know, I marked that off of where I thought it was at. Now, does that mean it couldn't be anywhere else in North Carolina? Yeah, it could be anywhere on the 14 states. But, you know, in that specific area, because of how thick it was. So I'm going to mark off any place that looks super thick. Now, by the halfway point that we went was probably the most open area. There was a lot of spots that were open.
I was going to ask you too about like just the general landscape of that area.
Yeah, that area, even when I flipped around and went the opposite way, there were a lot of rocks, you know, and a lot of big rock formations that I only had one day to look. I wish I had a whole week. I would have, you know, kept going back and looked, because there was a lot of other potential areas. And that's why I haven't really marked that off, is I haven't abandoned that solve area.
Well, because when you and I had talked before about the halfway point and in a previous video, and then from there I had looked up and found Blue Ridge Summit, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And so I've kind of focused from the halfway point south down kind of to the Maryland border. Yeah. And I like that whole state park. I think it's the same park that you were in, right? Michaux, or Pennsylvania residents, forgive me for my mispronunciation. Michaux or Michaux State Park.
Yeah.
But that whole area I'm still interested in, but I I don't have an exact match, but there's a lot of things. Like there's a place there called Bear Rocks, Bare. I like. There's a Wildcat Rocks there
Yeah.
in the state park. So there's a lot of cool things I think in that whole area of Pennsylvania. I just haven't narrowed it down to such a specific trail yet. But I do like just that whole kind of Pennsylvania area.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that are pointing to that area. I mean, I still also like the idea of Virginia, or not Virginia, but Vermont for other reasons, but not enough to get me there to start focusing on it yet. I want to exhaust Pennsylvania and then a little bit of Virginia first, because as of today, November 2nd, going on the record, I think it's in one of these two states now, but I am leaning towards Pennsylvania. You know, that's where that's where I'm standing right now, where I think it is.
Yeah, and just like to remind people, because we talked about this before too, the state flag of Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and the resemblance to the ornate style of the box is just
that
really cool find.
Yeah, that really was another big indicator. The 450,000 feet end to end, passing halfway through, being the midway point, and the state flag. Those are enough to point me, because you need to really come up with somewhere to get you to a state. Then you need, and there's more things in there to get you to a place in a state. Because like any state out there, if you think, well, I living from Indiana, for example, I think, certain boxes in Indiana. Well, man, Indiana's a pretty tall state. Where the heck do I go to the dunes by where I live? Or do I go midway through? Or do I go in the, southern part? Man, go to Brown County, maybe. There's a lot of great places to hike, but where's he going to put you? So you need to get the state, and those are the indicators I thought in the state. And then more specifically, the end to end, the halfway point, that's what got me to that area. It's exhausting just to find an area, and then when you're in the area, it's like that's a pretty big trail. I mean, we spent all day, and we put in 8 miles, which 8 miles isn't really long if you're walking on the street, but when you're walking up and down hills over rocks, man, I was feeling it. And I, work out every day on treadmill. And so
right. You're grabbing on tree branches and
I'm swinging like Tarzan, it takes a lot out of you, quite a bit. I'm glad we didn't take our dog with, or it would have slowed us down even more.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That poor dog.
Yeah. So do you have any plans on going boots on the ground this year at all? Or
I always did want to get out a second time. I just don't know if it's gonna. I was actually even thinking before we hopped on. It's funny because you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm like, I think the season's coming to an end. Like it's almost like a sport in my mind where I'm like, okay, it seems like the search season's coming to an end. We're going to hit the off season time where a lot of the work's just done behind the screen. So yeah, I don't know that I'll be able to get out there again this year. I would like to, I just don't know if it's in the cards or not.
Yeah.
So back to planning, I guess, for 2026.
Yeah. And I think that's important though. I mean, you need to split that up. I think, coming up with ideas and bouncing them off, and like doing videos like this and things, do help. And JCB's gonna be doing all these interviews coming up. That might shed some light, some new insight on the way he thinks and things like that. And yeah, I think it's a good time for everybody to take a physical break, and depending on your situation, a financial break from all the traveling. It's not cheap, I'll tell you that. I think our last trip, we had to buy plane tickets, hotel, rented a car. I mean, it's quite a bit. It wasn't like, just spending a weekend out going somewhere.
Right. worth it though, you know.
Yeah,
but yeah, you can only take so many of them.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're retired and you have the means of doing that. You Yeah, you're right. You can only do so much. And I know he wants to get people out, boots on the ground and out, but you do need to be smart about it and have a place before you go out there to do some recon. It would be nice if we lived by some of these areas, make it a little easier, but what are the odds, right?
Yeah, I wish I had more conviction that the past and future box was in Ohio, but I'm not there. So
yeah, I go back and forth on some other boxes and stuff, but right now this one it's so fresh in me, and it's drawn me to this area, and I think we'll be doing a lot more videos on this one. Until I exhaust it, take a break from it, because I will have to step away from it for a little bit and focus on the other. But I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to walk away from something for a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be found anytime soon.
Yeah. And I like it because it's a treasure map. Like, it's the most basic, the thing that you thought of since you were a little kid. Like, well, what if I was digging in my backyard and I happened to find a treasure map?
Yeah. That's another thing.
Really cool.
Yeah. And maybe that can be more of a distraction too, depending on how it's laid out in the book, because it's the only one that has a map. And would he do it differently than the other chapters? It's something you have to keep in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know until, that's why I'm really looking forward to these interviews coming up, ours as well. But yeah, I think we'll be able to get a little better insight and something to think about over the winter before we go back out and hit it again.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see all the upcoming interviews.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll do ours, and then maybe if we find something compelling, we'll do some reviews on the other ones and see what we thought. And it's a big deal. He's going to do quite a few from the ones that I'm hearing from the other channels, so it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I know there's good questions coming from everyone too. So.
yeah, and that's a good thing too. We're going to have different types of questions, different formats, and do I think he's going to give away answers? No, but he's going to give away what he wants to and what he feels he needs to, and
sometimes it's about what a person doesn't say though too. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
You can kind of glean things from omission.
Yeah. And it depends what you're looking for too. If it's something that just a clarifier on something that, maybe you have a solve and you're just wondering something that isn't necessarily a clue. Maybe he'll tell us what he hid the boxes in. I don't think that would be necessarily a clue per se, but it would be a clarifier, I think.
Yeah.
And it would be good to know, because then it'd get you thinking a little differently. Because I don't think if he came out tomorrow and said, hey, this is how I hid them, I don't think that's going to automatically solve it. I think it's going to help. It's going to help you when you're out looking, but it's not going to change or solve it all. I don't think drastically. I mean, if you're not in that general area, I don't think it's going to all of a sudden, now I don't think it's in Pennsylvania. I think it's in, Georgia, because, he said he put in this type of box,
Yeah, like you said, it changes maybe like how you look boots on the ground, but even then probably minimally. Like I'm looking for something that's white, but before I thought it was black or whatever, that's probably the smallest amount that it would. Who knows though? Maybe it would tip you off in some way, but I can't think of a way that it would, even just by saying it's
your solve would have to be pretty tight. Your solve would have to be pretty tight for it to be okay, all I'm waiting on is how he hit it.
Yeah.
In that case, with a little elbow grease, and I think you could find it regardless.
If I'm that far, I'm going there anyways.
Right. Right. So, do you have anything else to add to the box before we wrap up the conversation on Appalachian Trail?
No, nothing else right now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate, we'll circle back on this one. I know this, in this wintertime, I'm focusing on it, and I'd like to have your feedback, and we could bounce ideas off.
Yeah, no, it's always awesome coming on. I love talking to you about this stuff. Because how not a lot in life do I just get to sit down and talk to a person, but hey, do you want to talk about the Appalachian Trail Box?
Yeah.
And, they look at you like you got two heads or something. So when you meet another person who's passionate about it and likes like being creative and trying to solve these things, it's good. Yeah. That's what the online community is. That's where you find all your friends for,
Yeah. So. And that's why I like doing this for, not only for us, but for everybody else to get something out of it. So appreciate it.
Yeah. And it's cool to see everybody else, talk about it and all kind of work on the same thing. So
yeah, cool.